Hey guys, I'm Molly and I am from Charleston, West Virginia. So I'll just spend the next couple of minutes talking a bit about the ethnographic interview that I did. So the person I chose for my ethnographic interview is named Ritwick. Ritwick and I met during college. We both attended the college right here in Charleston, West Virginia, the University of Charleston. He is originally from New Delhi, India, born and raised there. Spent some time as he got into high school, attending a private school in the UK, and then eventually came here to the States for university. And so he currently still lives here in Charleston. Interestingly enough, he converted and became a Christian during his time at UC, and he now is a regular attendee of our church here in town. And so I chose Ritwick because I knew that he has a bit of what I would consider, and he told me as well, is kind of non-traditional in the sense of when we think of South Asian culture. From the sound of a lot of the interviews, it sounds like a lot of you have spent time in South Asia or interviewed other people from different parts of South Asia. And so we all kind of have a sense of a lot of the nuances of the culture, definitely not complete in any way, but when we think of this type of culture, we usually have a few things that we know stand out. And so I wanted to interview him to see if that was the case for him and his upbringing and his family, what similarities there were, or if his background was completely different. So I'll just go through a few of the things that stood out to me or seemed a little bit different than what I would have expected him to say. Of course, as is expected, though, the father is the head of the household there. Interesting, he said this was pretty common, and I'm sure you all have heard it too, the fact that families, even extended families, all live together in the same house. And so he said now back home, his parents live in the same house with his grandparents, and then they have a live-in servant who works for them with her family. So they all live together, and he said that's actually one of the reasons he doesn't want to go back, because he doesn't want to live in the house with everybody. What's unique about his family is that he said it's not uncommon for the mom or the wife to work necessarily in New Delhi, but his mom is a trauma surgeon, and she has been forever, and his dad is an MD for a chain of hospitals in the city. And so he said he is aware that his upbringing is much different than a lot of even his friends in a similar area. He talked about the decision-making process within the family. He said, though his father is probably the person who they would go to for an actual decision, since the grandfather lives in the same house, they would respectfully defer decisions to be made by him, and then it would trickle down, and impact the rest of the family. He talked a bit about, because I asked him if there was any sort of expectation for him to have a certain occupation since his parents are both in the medical field, and he said his parents didn't necessarily stress to him one particular field of study or line of work as long as he was successful. He said that, university was not an option. He was going, and he was going to do something, and he was going to be very successful, and that was their only requirement for him. He talked a bit about the religious structure of his family in particular. Religion, he said usually, and I know I've heard some of your interviews, you talked about how if you're born into this culture, then you are Hindu, or you're born into this culture, so you're, insert whatever the predominant religion is. And he said that's normally the case, and he sees that though his grandparents practice a religion called Jainism, and his last name is actually Jain, Jain. That's where that comes from. And he said, but that never got passed on to his parents. His parents consider themselves Hindus, though he said he never remembers them actually practicing, and to this day they don't. And so that never even got passed to him or his brother, though traditionally the religion would be passed on through the family. However, they are Hindu enough that they are very displeased about his conversion to Christianity, and so that's been an interesting dynamic within his family over the past few years. He talked a bit about how his parents do go to the temples on Sundays, with the priest as the leader, he said he mentioned a few of the different holy documents that they follow, but he said that they don't actually practice, and he himself obviously does not practice. So yeah, those were just a few of the things that really stood out. I think a lot of the other things that we all talked about are probably similar within at least the South Asian culture. He did not speak highly of the political leaders that are currently in power in India. So it's always interesting to hear, when you're in South Asia, what the general consensus is, and then hearing a converted believer and what his stance is. So yeah, I know I'm already over time, but I appreciate you guys listening. It's been really great to hear all of your all's interviews. So yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.